I'd like to thank Ms Shane for bringing this motion forward today and others for their comments so far. It's quite true that Canberra is a very diverse, welcoming, vibrant and adaptable place. It's diverse and welcoming, and that's why many of us who may not have been born here have chosen to make it our home. In fact, I think you'll find that the opposition benches are very reflective of the diversity in the Canberra community in terms of the number of women MLAs and men MLAs, the number of cultures represented, including some of those people who may have been born overseas, quite a number, and views as diverse as the community that we represent. And that's why I think it's a good opportunity to speak to this motion today about diversity and inclusion. And I feel the motion does give a bit of a nod to the Sustainable Development Goals, specifically number 10, which is about reducing inequality, including that based on income, as well as on age, sex, disability, race, ethnicity, origin, religion, or economic or other status. Our community here in Canberra does a lot to ensure that our differences are embraced and celebrated. And a motion on community inclusion was brought forward to the Assembly here by Mr Steele on the 29th of March this year. And today's motion and some of the speeches have some similarities to that motion. I think we all agree, all of us here, that Canberra is a proudly diverse community, a rich collection of people of different cultural and linguistic backgrounds, belief systems, sexual orientations and social and economic demographics, and that the whole ACT community is stronger when every person has a sense of belonging, feels supported and is able to contribute to their full capacity. Absolutely. I'm proud that in some previous working life I've been an advocate for people who otherwise may have been without a voice in our community. And this motion is an extension of that. It is absolutely imperative to support our LGBTIQ community, and there's been quite a bit of debate that already. But yet, this motion calls on or says in item 3, it recognises that the ACT government is already taking practical steps to promote an inclusive and supportive community. That's true. Yet, according to ACTCOS fact sheet of June 2017, 12.6% or 28,639 of all ACT residents are in the most disadvantaged 20% of Australians. Figures that measure disadvantage at area level conceal the disadvantage of many of these people who accordingly do not live in disadvantaged areas. The fact sheet also says cost of living pressures for those on low incomes in the ACT rose over the past year. The Consumer Price Index rose 1.8%, higher than the national average of 1.5%. The Selected Living Cost Index for other government transfer recipient, 1.8%, and age pensioner, 1.6% households, was also above the national CPI, while the Selected Living Cost Index for both employee, 1%, and self-funded retirees, 1.4% households, was below the national CPI figure. In sum, the general cost of living in the ACT increased above the national rate, while the cost of living for low-income households rose at a higher level than other households. This motion recognises in item 3 that the ACT government is already taking practical steps to promote an inclusive and supportive community. Yet, according to an article from yesterday in the Canberra Times, young Canberrans with high needs could be locked out of respite care by Christmas unless a last-minute solution is found to critical funding shortfalls. Families who spoke to the Canberra Times said they'd been left in limbo ever since, unable to provide other providers to take on their children once the changes kick in on October 26. At item 3 of the motion, it recognises that the ACT government is already taking practical steps to promote an inclusive and supportive community. Yet, earlier this year, in February, an article in the Canberra Times said homelessness services are reporting a rise in clients who are elderly women, some resorting to sleeping in cars and couch surfing for shelter before seeking help. Rising rental prices in areas previously more accessible for low-income groups and pensioners have locked out older women with low superannuations and savings. In Canberra, 316 people aged 55 years or older sought help from homelessness services last year. 44% in this group were women, according to the AIHW. Of all homeless clients, 6.8% were aged more than 55. Within this age group, 79 clients were aged 65 or older. At item 3, the motion recognises that the ACT government is already taking practical steps to promote an inclusive and supportive community. Yet, earlier this year in July, frontline staff, former detainees and government officials have come forward to blow the whistle on a series of disturbing incidents at Bimberi Youth Detention Centre between 2011 and 2017. Troubled children have allegedly been abused and humiliated by a small number of bad apple staff, several inside sources alleged. Staff have themselves been threatened and attacked by volatile detainees, with occupational violence dismissed as part and parcel of their difficult job, sources added. The motion at item 3 recognises that the ACT government is already taking practical steps to promote an inclusive and supportive community. Yet, Madam Speaker, foster carers last year in an article in the Canberra Times said they felt abandoned by the ACT government as transitional arrangements during an overhaul of the foster care system fell short. At item 3, Madam Speaker, the motion recognises that the ACT government is already taking practical steps to promote an inclusive and supportive community. Yet, on May 26 this year, an article in the Canberra Times said, if you need more proof that Canberra's shortage of affordable housing is crushing struggling families, look no further than 17-year-old Stephen, a pseudonym. He is the sole carer for his two little brothers, aged 9 and 10, and his father, who 6 weeks ago had open heart surgery. His dad was then terminated from his job as a truck driver when he was unable to work due to his ill health. The boy's mother died last year of cancer, aged just 39. I could go on, Madam Speaker. I have a number more examples here about poor record keeping for people receiving mental health care in Canberra, according to the Auditor-General. More Canberra kids in care as advocates call for community prevention. Articles about the Ngunnawal Bush Healing Farm and that it's no longer going to be a residential service as was originally promised. About a mother not told her sons were bashed in the Alexander McConaughey Centre until days later. That we have ACT suburbs with the highest and lowest levels of educational disadvantage, and that it's unfortunately and unacceptably lower educational performance in schools correlated with a higher proportion of students from a low socioeconomic background. Madam Speaker, there is still much to be done. I also note that unlike Sustainable Development Goal 10, this motion does not talk about freedom of religion, and I take Mr Barr's point and I can agree with him about freedom from religion. That does not mean that we should not support freedom of religion, and I'm a bit disappointed that that was left out of this particular motion. Let's not engage in an orgy of self-congratulation about how well we're doing. Let's focus on doing more. Let's focus on outcomes. Let's focus on supporting those Canberrans who need our help and not bring a grab bag of multiple different things ranging from women in sport and justice reinvention and a huge grab bag of different things.
Your time has expired. Thank you, Ms Lauder. The question is that Mr Parton's amendment be agreed to. In closing, Ms Chain.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.